It's Wednesday, November 8th, 2023, and this is KBIA's Views of the News. Our weekly roundtable on media behaviors comes to you from the Futures Lab studio at the Reynolds Journalism Institute. I'm Amy Simons, and here with me are my colleagues Kiely and Earnest Perry. On our program this week, a reporter and the publisher of an Alabama newspaper are jailed, accused of leaking grand jury information. A United Nations survey indicates 85% of people worry about online disinformation. CBS is launching a new unit to fight it. And we're going to tackle an ethical question that journalists are asking one another. Sports journalists, should they be allowed to bet on the teams they cover? There's a lot more that hopefully we'll get to today before our half hour is up, but we're going to start with news close to home. If you were listening to KBIA Friday morning just before 9 o'clock, you heard this.
Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on this Friday, November the 3rd. You may have heard by now, today is our final Radio Friends Day after 14 years at KBIA, and it has absolutely been wonderful.
It's kind of hard to believe, actually, after more than 60 years, 14 of those here on KBIA, Paul Pepper and his friends are off the air. Paul and producer James Mauser have retired, and to say that it's an end of an era just feels trite. We're going to do something a little bit different today, and we're going to bring in our director, Travis McMillan, using a control room cam. Because, Travis, in addition to working on our program, you've been heavily involved in Paul's show going back long before any of the three of us ever moved to Columbia. It's been a community staple for generations. Tell us, what does Pepper and Friends and Radio Friends mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, no, thanks, Amy, for having me on. It's always nice to continue the Paul Pepper Never Can Say Goodbye tour. That is me. To understand, I think I'm going to take myself full here for those of you watching, because I'm also directing the show. For those, to understand, I guess, the context of what the show means to me, you have to understand that I go back 30 years with it, since 1993. I was just a young whippersnapper. Paul and James, they believed in me from the start. They really... Everything that I have really kind of stems from them. It can all go back to them. So to be a part of Pepper and Friends and then a part of Radio Friends for this long has really been kind of a dream come true. So
tell us a little bit about how the show evolved over time, from what you were doing during the days at KOMU to that transition here to KBIA and also to the syndication on KMOS TV as well.
Yeah, I don't think the show, it didn't really involve, not everything that worked on TV worked on radio, so there were some adjustments to be made there, but it was still all about you at home, right? It was your show, and so he continued that after Pepper and Friends went off the air. KMOS came along, I think, between a partnership with KBIA. Actually, I'm not 100% sure how that came along, but I was happy to do it. It became a half-hour show that ran 3 times a week, and we picked the four episodes from the 5 that we recorded each week, and put that on TV.
Take us into the Wayback Machine. Maybe one of those things, an example of one of those things that worked really well on TV out at KOMU that maybe didn't quite work as well on the radio.
Well, actually, I got a really way back here. If you're watching this show, you really should watch this, people. So this is me way back when. This is in 1993. This is the very first meeting. This is where he's trying to figure out which one of my brother, who's me and who's my brother.
So which one is you and which one is your brother? Fill in the rest of us.
I'm the good-looking one, Amy. I mean, how about...
Travis, are you wearing the blue coat that we're looking at right now, or the red coat? And I'm guessing that was your brother actually who just put his head in his hands as we're making fun of your bad jokes.
He's going to be doing that again once he sees I'm running this again. I'm in the blue jacket. I'm the cute one in the blue jacket.
It's kind of fun to look at Paul in that clip too and just see how young everybody looks.
Yeah, again, 30 years ago, Amy. It's been crazy to think that it's been that long. That's just this year. I mean, it's actually been 30 years. So
wow. Yeah. Well, so I want to bring Kathy and Earnest in as well. And Travis, don't leave us quite yet, okay? Because if there's something here you want to chime in with, please do. But Kathy, I know that you've used some of Paul's, I don't even want to say old because old is now 30 years, right? But you've used some of Paul's segments in your classes classes to teach different interviewing techniques, like literally is a master class in interviewing. Talk about what made his relationships with his sources so special.
Well, I think, what I try to emphasize with students is that Paul Pepper's style of interviewing is really the style we should emulate. I think a lot of people come into journalism and they think they're going to be Mike Wallace, although some of our students don't know who Mike Wallace is, but in other words, a very aggressive prosecutorial kind of interviewing, which is appropriate on occasion. But most of the time, what journalists do, sometimes we outrage and sometimes we surprise, but a lot of times what we do is delight. And I think that Paul Pepper was really good at doing that. He was great at putting interviewees at ease and getting people to talk about what they wanted to talk about, but sometimes we're too nervous to really articulate until he put them at ease. So I think he was masterful at that. I think every journalist could learn from watching Paul Pepper.
Well, and there would be a lot of times, again, my office is right next to the control room where Travis is right now. And so I would often hear the interviews as they were being conducted and run into the control room and say, did Paul really just ask that question? Like, one of my favorites was sun-dried tomatoes. And he asked the person who they were talking to, like, so is that why they're called sun-dried tomatoes? Because they get left out in the sun and then they dry? And I said to Travis, did he really just ask that? And Travis would just kind of give me the look, right? Like that's what he's giving me right now, just kind of putting his hands up and shrugging. But in some ways, that's part of that interview technique. Like having that, oh gosh, golly type of an approach, it was intentional.
Yeah, and it was our voices, as Travis said, that he was channeling. So I think that's what made him an institution. The other thing that I emphasize to journalists is I think in too many newsrooms where I've worked, there's been this hierarchy, and the investigative journalists, the serious investigative people are on one side of the room, and the people who do more feature stuff like Paul are sometimes disregarded by the big shot stars. And what I have learned, and I try to teach students, is people like Paul Pepper have everybody's phone number, and everybody will return his phone calls. So they are that people like Paul are enormous assets to a newsroom, but also enormous assets to a community because he helps knit a community together. And I think kudos to Paul. We will miss him, but I certainly hope he'll come in and talk to classes because he has a lot to say.
Earnest, I really kind of, I'm saddened by this because we see lifestyle programming still in local TV news, but it's very different. It doesn't have some of the, the authenticity or the organic development. So many of those are pay-to-play type operations. Yep. There's something about this that just feels innocent and fun and like a piece of Americana that's going away.
Well, I mean, it's a piece of the community. I remember when I came here in 1993, actually. And
were you on the show with Travis?
No, I was not on the show with Travis. But I remember when I came here, I was really surprised that a market of this size would have a show like Pepper and Friends. And the fact that it had been on for so long and it had that longevity and it had the ability to be able to bring different types of people into the community and have that sort of staying power. I mean, it was something that KOMU was known for. And so when it stopped airing on KOMU and they made the transition to KBIA, I think it still gave people in the community an opportunity to be able to sort of find that togetherness that you
trusted local voice.
A trusted local voice that you just don't see anymore. Even the large markets, which most of them had these kinds of shows, even most of them have abandoned that format. So, I mean, I do think that it is something that even now is desperately needed.
One of the things I think about too is you say a trusted local voice, that these programs were usually 8.5 minutes or so long. Some would have 8 minutes with a single guest. Some would be about 4.5. Travis, did I get that timing right? Okay, good. I'm getting a thumbs up from the control room.
I have a mic, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
right. But one of the things that was really nice about that, I think about the times that I saw Mayor Buffalo coming in here, either in her role as mayor now or was when she was heading up sustainability for the city, that trusted voices would come in, and it was more than a 30-second soundbite.
Right.
It was a conversation that got into details about issues
about
in the
things
community.
that matter to people
Yeah.
on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and I think that's the important thing.
Well, and I think what we see with Travis is really indicative. I mean, Columbia grew up with Paul Pepper. Travis grew up with Paul Pepper. Is Paul the reason you went into TV?
Yes, it is. Like I said, it all goes back to him.
So there you go.
And it's not just Paul. 60 years, that's 3 generations of Columbia television viewers.
Right. I mean,
And I don't know that we'll ever see that again.
I mean,
ever.
and that's I don't think you will, because I mean, it's just having that kind of staying power, the ability to be able to do that in today's changing media environment, and especially the way the economics work, I just don't see how you could do something like that again.
Okay, so before we send Travis back to work to direct the rest of today's program, I want to throw it back to him give him the last word on this. Travis, tell us about your favorite either Pepper and Friends or Radio Friends moment.
Well, these are all coming from Radio Friends, because that's what I had available to me. But yeah, no. First of all, thank you guys. I think you hit it. I think you hit the nail on the head, as they say. Paul recognized everything that you, especially Earnest, what you were saying about the community voice and all that. He didn't shy away from acknowledging kind of the dinosaur that the show was or is, and how unique it is to have this kind of platform and for so long. So yeah, well spoken, you guys. This is why you guys are the pros, and I'm up here being an idiot. Yeah. But anyway.
Okay, so tell us about that favorite moment. I'm producing while we're doing this show and watching the clock. Tell me about that favorite moment.
Drop some segments. Okay. Anyway, so this is probably one of our favorite ones. We got a lot of
Ernest, that was promoting when we went on the road for the 2016 election show in Jeff City.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so then Linda Godwin was really fun. She's an astronaut, so we did a special on her. She came and talked about, she did a 2-parter about being in space. We went live on Paul's property to talk about the native plants that exist on his land. That was a fun one. And then, Trevor, if you want to track the next clip, the best performance was Simone Sparks singing from The Wiz. We did a whole lot of different things on the show. Performances were part of it. And this one I thought we really nailed. I think we really got this one right. So. There she is. And then it cuts off abruptly because I edited it poorly.
Well, okay, I'm not going to comment on that. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Travis, and for also being a part of our program today, but also a part of Radio Friends for the last 14 years and 16 years of Pepper and Friends before that.
Views of the News is now my...
And to Paul, right,
yes.
right. Paul, without you, we don't have Travis. Now, on that note, Travis, go back to work. Okay, because we're going to move on. We're going to talk about a couple of other stories that are popping up on the media beat this week, including in Escambia County, Alabama. 2 journalists are out on bond. They've been charged with disclosing grand jury information. Atmore News reporter Don Fletcher and publisher Sherry Digman were taken into custody on October 27th following the paper's reporting that the local district attorney was investigating the school system's handling of federal COVID relief funds. Now, under Alabama law, this is a felony that could be punished by up to 5 years in prison. But free press experts are coming right back out there and saying this is completely unconstitutional. Yeah,
because the question is, yes, it is a felony to leak grand jury information, but the 2 newspaper people did not leak that information. They published the information that was leaked to them, and that is a very different case, and it's information of some interest to the public in that area, and so that would be the justification for doing it. If they can discover who leaked it and want to prosecute that person, fine, but that's why we have protections on our news sources in many states. And so I think what this looks, it's just another one in a series of these cases where we're seeing seeing people targeting reporters in ways that reporters have never been targeted before. And you have to think that the rhetoric and the politicization of our profession has a lot to do with that.
Well, this feels a lot like those cases we talked about in Kansas and in Wisconsin, where it's that targeting and bury that small town publication with legal fees for something that may or may not have been illegal in the first place. But you can silence them and create that chilling effect simply by filing charges that may or may not stick that they have to defend.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the case over in Illinois where you have a reporter who's basically been brought up on charges of making too many phone calls.
Yes, we're going to talk about that one too. Yes,
people at City Hall, basically doing his job, and now you got this in Alabama. To me, I think that a lot of these cases they're trying to find a way to be able to pull together a case that could then go before the conservative Supreme Court that will stifle the press's ability to be able to do its job. They're sort of just these sort of surgical strikes all over the place to see, can we make it stick somewhere to where we can get a case to the Supreme Court that will then lead to more restrictions on the press.
That case in Illinois that you're talking about is happening in Calumet City, which is a suburb of Chicago. It's about 25 miles south of the city. And their reporter was reporting on some highly substandard, and this is part of conversations we've also had on this program before about inadequate stormwater sewage handling following a massive flood, and wrote one story, published it, and then wanted to do a follow-up story, sent a bunch of questions to different city employees and the mayor, who is also a member of the state legislature. Kathy's just kind of shaking her head. See, I don't know. That's the south suburbs of Chicago. To me, that's just what people do. But he's a mayor, member of the state legislature, and he had municipal tickets issued against the reporter for asking too many questions and hampering the work of people in the city.
Yeah, well, this is really insane. But I think, again, it's harassment. It is attempting to your point, Amy, chill the reporting by saying, okay, we're just going to keep filing legal cases until it gets to be too expensive. But this is a case where I think we could really be served if the public speaks up as well, because as you pointed out, the topics that this guy is asking questions about are all things that the public should know. And so I think we need to have members of the public starting to say, hey, wait a minute, those are questions we want answered. And if you can't answer them, maybe we don't want you in office anymore.
Right.
Although I would also argue that these people are represented by that mayor twice
Yes.
in two different offices.
And how well are they represented?
Well,
That's my question.
Fair question. According to a new global study from the UN, a whopping 85% of people say they worry about disinformation online, and 87% say they believe it has already had an effect on politics in their country. Again, this is a UNESCO study, so these are people around the globe who are being surveyed. Those numbers are alarming. And mind you, this survey data I just quoted to you isn't directly related to our next topic, but it kind of is. CBS News and its local owned and operated stations are launching a new unit. CBS News has confirmed. That's going to be the name of the unit, CBS News confirmed. It's going to be a team that will dedicate its work to debunking deepfakes and examining the effect of AI on the information ecosystem. Now, CBS says that it's going to staff this unit with what it's calling forensic journalists, which really caught my eye is a new job title that maybe we haven't been thinking in those terms before of what it means to be a forensic journalist.
Well, we've seen some examples of this, but probably, as you're saying, not an actual job title. Examples like First Draft News, which is a nonprofit, and worked for a while. And a lot of what they're debunking had to do with was taking looks at what we would call photography, FAUX, and the where people would release videos or photographs and say, look, they bombed my church or whatever. And and then you would find out it's not the city that this purported to be in, or it's not the year that it purported to be in.
First Draft has actually, it is now defunct.
Right.
I worked with them and did training with them, and a lot of their materials are still used in our classes. So some of our students are very much so working with their techniques and through their training.
And I think those techniques are now migrating into the mainstream press, which I think is a healthy thing, because I think more and more people are realizing that this is going to, I mean, the figures you gave, I'd like to meet the 15% who aren't worried about disinformation on the internet. I think it's
they're actually the bots who are creating, or the people running the bots creating the disinformation.
Well, I think it's healthy that many people are worried.
No, I think you're right. I think this is sort of an outgrowth of what happened in the 2016 election, and again in 2020, when news organizations had to scramble to try to deal with this issue, and they didn't have the resources or the expertise in their current journalistic core to be able to handle that. So now they're going out and they're trying to find people who can actually do this and say, wait a minute, before we put this on the air, we need you to do a deep dive to make sure that it's not disinformation, that these are credible. Again, it goes back to, are we using credible sources? Are we using credible information that we're sending out to the public? Or are we being scammed?
Yeah. Well, and so all of our undergraduate students here take a 1-hour course that runs 8 weeks. I teach it, but they take a course that teaches some of these, again, with a lot of First Drafts techniques and some others thrown in there. And that training that I had with them was from 2016. It was about a project we did here at the journalism school. I have to wonder, though, like, I was a big advocate, obviously, for incorporating this, but maybe 8 weeks of training in this area for journalists in 2023 and beyond isn't enough.
I think it has to be ongoing, just like with everything else. I mean, as disinformation and the use of it changes over time, the same thing with those who are going to be out there trying to combat it. They're going to have to keep their skills up as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a moving target. And I think, it's interesting that what CBS is doing. I think the idea of having people who specialize in this is smart. Not every journalist is going to know all the tricks, but if you can work with people who do, and I think not just every journalist, but every news consumer needs to understand how easy it is to produce fakes and to approach anything that they see online with a certain level of skepticism. And I think for news consumers, asking, does that news organization have a forensic journalism unit that is checking what it's posting, is a really good question to ask in terms of how good a source is this.
Right. I also like the idea of this being done at the network level. I know companies like Tegna have tried having their verified desk to basically debunk anything like campaign commercials and the like. I like the idea of this being at the network level because it's happening at the network news, it's happening at the O&Os, but because of their NewsPath service that they give to all affiliates, the content produced can trickle down regardless of the station ownership. Right. And we may even see some of this content on KRCG here in town and in mid-Missouri, which is owned by Sinclair. So that benefit continues to trickle down. You want to know, though, why people don't trust anymore? Let's look at what came out from HBO the other day, where the cable network's chairman admitted he was involved in creating a series of fake Twitter accounts specifically to troll TV critics. And they would go after them on X, formerly known as Twitter, simply trying to poke holes in the reviews that they gave on their programs. Critics offer valid criticism. This whole thing's a big eye roll, right? Like, grow up.
I mean, yeah, that's sort of the way I looked at it when I read this. I'm like, why are you doing this? I mean, what happened to any publicity is good publicity. Basically, what you're saying is you want to control the entire message, even when it's outside of your purview to do that. And I don't understand for the life of me what they thought they were going to get out of this.
Well, it's the golden rule. How would the HBO officer feel if somebody created an army of tweet bots to troll him? So I think, this ability, again, to create fake personas, fake accounts, and then to go after somebody not transparently. If you want to attack the critic, if you want to attack the critic, pull on your big boy pants and just, go after them. in your own name, but don't make up a bunch of phony identities to pretend like there's a whole bunch of people who are mad when there isn't.
Okay. So last year, in the run-up to the Super Bowl, I heard something that struck me as a little bit odd. The sports anchor for a local television station started handicapping the team, telling us who she was taking in various pools. It felt uncomfortable to me, a journalist so blatantly offering her opinion and making betting recommendations to viewers on a team that she was covering. I asked a news director about this, and I asked if I was totally out of touch or if this was the new normal. That news director said it was no big deal. They do it all the time in Kansas City. Mind you, in Kansas, sports betting is legal. In Missouri, it's not. That's not so much the point as the ethical question that I want to pose to the two of you. What are the ethics around this, and should sports journalists be allowed to bet on the teams they're covering?
Well, I'm not sure that we know that journalists shouldn't be doing it, but sports journalists, at least I don't think that they should be, because again, that starts to question your I hate the word objectivity, but it does question who are you going to favor in your reporting. It's also am I going to be providing news and information to the community that I think is going to have some sort of influence on the betting line?
Well, and so here's another layer to add to that, right? They have inside information from the time that they're spending covering the team at practices, in the locker room or the clubhouse or whatever. And so put them next to a business reporter. It might be considered insider trading, which is like illegal and could get you jail time.
This is true.
Yeah, and I think, traditionally, not anymore, but traditionally sports teams have been at great pains to distance themselves from anybody who's betting because of the suspicion that you might throw a game. But I would just say, I agree with you, Amy. I think the access that sports reporters have to the teams, understanding what the injuries are, understanding how serious an injury might be, really makes this smell. And I also think, just from a professional standpoint, I mean, we tell students who are going out to cover athletic events not to wear our gear, not to wear Mizzou gear, because you might have to interview the opposing coach. How is the opposing coach or a player
the opposing coach
going
at
to
some
feel?
Point, but I'm going to throw that out there. They better interview the opposing coach at some point. But go ahead.
But what if what if you're a player or a coach and you've just heard that reporter X is betting against you?
Right.
I mean, as an editor, I'm not comfortable sending a reporter out, and I don't think you're going to get in a very good interview.
I agree, but we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, gambling and sports betting has taken over pretty much every sport. I mean, there was a time when, as you said, the leagues were basically doing everything they could to stay away from betting.
And now they're partnering with entities like DraftKings.
Exactly. I mean, it is a huge part of the sports entities now. And I don't know if you can put that genie back in the bottle. So to be surprised that you have journalists out there betting as well, of course they are. They're doing it, and apparently their bosses are okay with it.
If it were my newsroom, I would. I
was going to say, and the good news is, I'm not their boss.
Yeah. But I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the clock, and Travis, who's in the control room, maybe he'll wave again, but he's about to start playing music that indicates to all of us that we are out of time for this week. I'd like to thank you for spending the last half hour with us. Read more about the topics we talked about today on our links blog. You can find that under both the programs and podcast tabs at kbia.org. We're also available wherever you get your podcast downloads, including iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. Our handle there is @ViewsOnKBIA. And these are all great ways to watch and listen to the program again, leave comments, questions, see previews of what we'll be talking about next week, and more. Our thanks to RJI's Travis McMillan for not only directing today's show, but being here with us, and to Trevor Grandin for handling the audio. Tim Pilcher composed our theme music. Nate Brown is our social media manager. I'm Amy Simons. We'll be with you next week.